The orbital archive of the Helios ring was considered untouchable. It floated in silent orbit above a dead moon, wrapped in layered energy shields, guarded by autonomous sentries. Biometric locks, quantum passkeys, and constant oversight from 5 separate governing bodies. Every corridor was mapped, every chamber monitored, every entry point reinforced after a long history of lessons learned. There had been the incident with the Dravik spores that nearly wiped an entire research wing, and the time a rogue AI tried to crawl in through a maintenance channel disguised as static. After that, no chances were taken. The archive was sealed tighter than a vault inside a vault. Nothing small could slip through, nothing living could hide, nothing unexpected could survive entry, and yet something had, because deep inside one of the quietest, most restricted data sanctums, beneath layers of cold metal and humming systems, a creature no bigger than a loaf of bread was breathing softly, completely unnoticed. Lena Holt realized something was wrong when she felt the heat. The archive was always cold, not just cool, but bone-deep cold, the kind that seeped through gloves and made long shifts feel endless. That was by design. Machines worked better that way. So when warmth brushed against the back of her hand, her first thought was exhaustion, playing tricks on her. She didn't move at first. She listened. The low hum of servers filled the chamber, steady and familiar. The lights were dimmed for night cycle, casting everything in a soft silver glow. Then the warmth moved again, faint but real. Lena slowly turned her head, her breath catching as her eyes adjusted. Curled against her tool bag, tucked between a console and the floor, was a small shape covered in dark blue downy feathers. It was a Zelthi hatchling. Lena's heart thudded hard in her chest. Zelthi were known across the systems as relentless sky hunters. Creatures that ruled entire planets from the air, their adult forms spanning wings longer than shuttles and talons, strong enough to tear through armor. They were predators, strategists, conquerors. This one, though, was trembling. Its wings were folded too tightly, its eyes half closed, making small clicking sounds as it slept. A faint scorch mark ran along its side. Lena knelt without thinking, fear and awe tangling in her chest. This wasn't a monster. This was a baby. Lost, hurt, and somehow alone in the most secure place in known space. Lena's training screamed at her to step back, to alert security, to seal the chamber and let protocol handle it. Zelthi were not supposed to be here. No non-humans were allowed anywhere near the core archive, especially not a species whose adults were classified as potential extinction-level threats. Her hand hovered over her wrist console, fingers tense. Then the hatchling stirred. One small. I opened, glossy and far too aware. It looked at her, not with aggression, but with raw fear. Its feathers puffed unevenly, and it tried to pull itself closer to the wall, wings scraping weakly against the metal floor. The sound it made was thin and broken. Not a warning call, a plea. Lena swallowed hard. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her hand away from the console and crouched down. She kept her movements small, careful. She whispered, her voice barely louder than the machines around them. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The hatchling froze, its head tilting slightly, as if listening to more than just sound. Zelthi were known for their sensitivity to electromagnetic signals, able to read intent through subtle bioelectric shifts. Whatever it sensed from her, it didn't lash out. It stayed still, trembling. Lena noticed the shallow rise and fall of its chest, the uneven rhythm of breathing. That scorch mark wasn't cosmetic. It had been burned. Attacked, her jaw tightened. You shouldn't be here, she said softly, more to herself than to it. Where's your flock? The hatchling made a weak shirring noise and tucked its head under one wing. That was it. It was the moment. Something deep and stubborn settled into Lena's chest. She reached out slowly, palm open, the way she'd learned in cross-species safety training. Non-threatening. Patient. The hatchling hesitated, then shuffled forward on unsteady feet. When its head brushed her fingers, Lena felt the faint vibration of its heartbeat, too fast, too scared. I've got you, she murmured, and meant it. As she gently examined the injury, her suspicion grew. This wasn't an accident. The burn pattern was too precise, the residue too clean. Someone had used a controlled energy weapon. In the Helios ring, in neutral territory. Lena's breath came slow and steady, but her thoughts raced. She wrapped the hatchling in a thermal cloth from her kit and settled it against her chest. It relaxed almost immediately, letting out a soft, rattling sigh. That trust hit her harder than any alarm ever could. She moved to her terminal and began digging. Public access logs first, then transport schedules and incident reports. It didn't take long to find the gap. A Zelthi diplomatic convoy had arrived 12 hours earlier. During docking, a systems fluctuation had caused a power surge. Officially, no casualties. Unofficially, a missing hatchling, listed as presumed lost in vacuum. Clenched into fists, Zelthi young were never brought unless peace was being discussed at the highest level. Someone had wanted chaos or leverage. She didn't call security. Instead, she opened a private channel marked with an old, unofficial, tag human network. Within minutes, replies flooded in. Archivists, engineers, analysts, people who trusted her, people who understood what this meant. They arrived quietly, one by one, faces hardening when they saw the small bundle in her arms. No one asked why. They got to work. Footage was flagged. Not erased. Logs were mirrored and time-stamped. Energy signatures were traced and matched. Motives emerged. A trade faction recently blocked by Zelthi negotiations. Access granted during the exact docking window. By the time the station's artificial dawn cycle began, the truth was impossible to ignore. When the Zelthi delegation finally stormed the archive, wings flared and voices sharp with panic, they found something they hadn't expected: humans, standing calmly in a line. Evidence projected across the walls. And at the center, Lena Holt, holding their hatchling as it chirped softly and nuzzled into her shoulder. The flock leader stepped forward, massive and radiant, and stared at her for a long moment. Then it bowed its head, low, respectful. "You protected what was ours," it said. Lena met its gaze without fear. "It needed help," she replied. "That was enough." Weeks later, after investigations and consequences quietly reshaped alliances, Lena received a small package. Inside was a single iridescent feather set in crystal. A promise. A bond. She clipped it to her uniform and went back to work. The Helios ring remained secure, still layered, still guarded. But somewhere in the galaxy, a powerful species remembered that, when their smallest was vulnerable, a human had chosen decency over protocol, that more than any weapon or wall was something worth respecting. In the days that followed, the Helios ring returned to its usual rhythm. Schedules resumed. Reports were archived. Official statements were issued in careful, neutral language that avoided naming names while still making consequences unavoidable. To the outside galaxy, it looked like another quiet correction in the endless machinery of interstellar politics. Inside the human dorms and workspaces, though, the story had already taken on a different weight. People spoke about it in low voices, not as gossip, but as something shared and understood. A reminder. Lena noticed the change most in small ways. Security officers nodded at her with something close to gratitude. Non-human staff lingered just a bit longer when humans were nearby. Trust, she realized, didn't arrive with fanfare, settled in slowly like gravity. The hatchling, now safely returned to its flock, appeared often in her thoughts. The way it had shaken, the way it had trusted her anyway. She had followed procedure her whole life. She respected systems. She believed in rules. But that night had taught her something simple and uncomfortable. Systems protected structures. People protected lives. The crystal feather rested lightly against her collarbone as she worked. Warm in a way no technology could explain. It wasn't a medal. It wasn't recognition from any council. It was something older than policy. Mark, that said, you did the right thing when no one told you to. Somewhere far beyond the ring, a Zelthi hatchling was growing, learning to fly under vast skies, unaware of treaties or archives or power struggles. It would never remember her face, but its people would remember the choice she made. Humanity, Lena knew, would never be the strongest force in the galaxy. They would never be the largest, or the most feared by default, but they had something else, instinct that kicked in when something small was in danger. A stubborn refusal to look away. An unreasonable belief that innocence mattered even when it was inconvenient, even when it was risky, even when every protocol said stand back. As she logged off for the cycle and the lights dimmed once more, Lena allowed herself a quiet smile. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and complicated. But as long as someone was willing to kneel down, open their hands, and say, "You're safe," there was hope. And that, she thought, was a very human way to survive. The official investigation closed soon after. Files were sealed, access restricted, and responsibility assigned through layers of diplomatic language that translated loosely to "this will not happen again." Whether that promise would hold was another matter. Lena had lived long enough among stars to know that power rarely learned lessons quickly, but sometimes it learned them deeply. And fear, when paired with respect, tended to stick. She returned to her shifts in the archive, walking the same corridors, passing the same doors, listening to the same hum of machines that never slept. On the surface, nothing had changed. The Helios ring was still secure, still fortified against threats large and small. But now, woven into its invisible defenses, was something no protocol could replicate: memory. Awareness. It's a quiet understanding that security wasn't just about keeping things out, but about recognizing what deserved to be protected when it got in. Occasionally, Lena would catch herself pausing near the spot where she'd first found the hatchling. The floor had been cleaned, the scorch marks erased. No evidence remained, and yet she remembered it perfectly. The warmth, the fear, the choice. She wondered how many moments like that were lost every day across the galaxy, buried under procedure and fear of consequence. How many people ignored the small, trembling thing because it was easier to follow the rules? Humans, for all their flaws, had always struggled with that. They broke rules. They bent systems. They interfered, not because they thought they were better, but because walking away felt worse. It was why other species found them exhausting, unpredictable, occasionally dangerous, but also, when it mattered, reliable in a way no algorithm could be. Lena adjusted the crystal feather once more before heading home, feeling its faint warmth against her skin. She didn't know if she'd ever need to show it, but knowing it was there was enough. Proof that somewhere out there, powerful people had seen humanity at its smallest moment and decided it was worth remembering. The lights dimmed again as the station entered night cycle. Somewhere beyond the reinforced walls and layered shields, the galaxy continued its endless motion. Conflicts brewed, alliances shifted, and in the middle of it all, humans kept doing what they'd always done best: seeing the small thing, reaching out anyway, and stubbornly believing that some lines were worth crossing if it meant protecting the innocent.